I get a lot wrong. I get most things wrong. If I transfer from 90% wrong to 89% wrong, that's a major achievement. Don't underestimate it. But I figured out something awesome today. Fucking awesome. Fucking awesome. And I don't want to lose it. I'll get off the point. As a friend of mine, to quote a friend of mine who quoted, I think it's, what is it, Tom Robbins? So much of life seems to be off the point. Um, I'm a little bit obsessed with the idea of womanhood and Mary as it's related to the 2,000 plus year old tradition and the 5,000 plus year old tradition. Very much. So I guess I'll start with like an eye for an eye. Now, this is just a parenthetical comment, so people who just talk regular, hold on. But an eye for an eye is mathematically in complex imaginary mathematics is symbolically related via the iamblichean interpretation of Aristotelian final causes. It's a symbolic stronghold. It's super important and correct for this time, symbolically only. But as it relates to then, as it relates to people, there's all kind of Bible folk who are like eye for an eye, right? Retributional. But eye for an eye, most historically, is the Hammurabi Code, which is Babylonian. Even though it's mentioned in Exodus, it's a saying Babylonian is like talking about the tooth fairy, but well, but it's a Babylonian concept. It's that which the God of gods was rebelling against, right? We forget or we overlook the fact that like almost everything about the Old Testament was shit God hated in quote unquote God's own words in the Old Testament, right? So, you know, I've heard all kinds of shit, but like word for word in the story progression, I'm about up to 2 Kings in my linear study from beginning to end. I can't help but hear all the other shit, and then of course I've heard shit from my perspective, but like the importance of beginning at the beginning of the Bible and going to the end in a linear story doesn't come up much. People talk about Bible study. So you could go to 20 years of Bible study of reading this verse, that verse, this verse, that verse. Super important. I'm not against it. We need it. But if you're not into the Bible, you kind of should be a little bit because it's the backbone of all of Western culture, which is the backbone of the world. Not that the backbone's the most important part of the body, but if you don't have a good bridge, if you don't have a good arc, everything that stands upon it falls, right? But yeah, the eye for the eye shit, that's the quote unquote Babylonian shit that God was against. Just like God was against most of the, I mean, what do you say? Hebrew, Jews, Israelites, the Jacobians, the Josephians, Joseph. It all really came from Joseph, right? In my reading of the Bible, you know, and it's funny, in every hotel around the world, it's Gideon's Bible. Or that's what the, you know, the Gideons. And then the song Gideon's Bible, you know. So Gideon's got a lot of sway in our minds, even if we don't think that much. We've heard it, right? We've heard Gideon's Bible. Oh, Gideon, yeah, right. What did Gideon do? He tore down, or wait, was it Gideon? Thereabouts. Tore down the statue of the bull. There's a wooden statue of the bull. People are like, hey. Gideon's like, nope. Tore it down, lit it on fire, killed the bull, burned it. That's for you, God. And we all thinking like, yeah, way to go, Gideon. Yeah, man, barbecue. When really God's like, fuck. They did it again. Stupid fucking Jews. I know, it sounds anti-Semitic, right? With the whole Hammurabi Code, you know. And, I mean, at least on the surface, you know, a lot of that leaks into Islam and so on, you know. Which I consider, I'm gonna say something controversial. People are gonna hate me for this, man. I'm gonna get fucking murdered for this shit. But I'm gonna say it anyway because it's true, man. Is that Islam, a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, you know, but I've heard some rabbis. I listen to a lot of shit, you know. I watch a lot of YouTube videos. I have more information than ever. And actually, yeah, one of the best descriptions of like how God feels I've ever heard was from this Jewish dude talking about how, like, you know, like God's hurting, you know. Heaven ain't necessarily like where God resides ain't necessarily so great as you think, because God's dealing with 24/7. Help me, help me, help me, help me, help me. You know, if God sees everything, and if we're not helping, and God's hurting, God's hurting. So, I ain't never heard no Christian say that. All they ever say is God's perfect and perfect love. But people don't realize, except for, well, I shouldn't say, some people do. We all do. We all do, but no one talks about it. How much perfect love hurts. We don't think of God cowering in a corner. But if God knows everything, most things on this globe or this plane cower and pump up and puff up. In fear and anger, trying to push back against the great fucking mouth of this world. You know? But it's not the world that's evil, it's us. It's this mouth. Say, oh, it's not what goes in your mouth, but what comes out. Depends what we mean by mouth. Because when this mouth is still, this mouth keeps moving and it doesn't stop. So what do we mean by mouth? I was just silent for like, what, 3-4 seconds? I just spoke like 15 fucking paragraphs up here, right? That's the mouth. Who's in charge of that? Yeah, so I was just kind of shitting on Islam a little bit because saying, like it's my contention that Islam as we know it is the last uh, canonical Old Testament text, Now, like the Kabbalah's all cool, and that's a lot later. A lot later. Awesome. Kabbalah, awesome. So far, because we begin to dive into things. But that's not, the Kabbalah is not an Old Testament text. If we had to choose between New and Old Testament, the Kabbalah is a New Testament text. But really, it's an Aquarian text. The Kabbalah is a second coming text. Like the Messiah already came. We understand that we simultaneously live in a shared space of different spaces on this globe. We live in different localities centralized around essentially the center of the earth. We live in these disparate communities, more or less, around the center of the earth with closely related radii. But we don't understand that we also live in time that way. And that for some, the apocalypse has already come and gone. For some, we are in that apocalypse. And for others, the apocalypse is yet to come. Though just as space condenses, there aren't very many people living in the middle of the fucking ocean. But there's a bunch of people living here where I am. There's a bunch more living over there, and there's a little bit smaller of a bunch living over there, and so on. Same in time. So we have this soul group condensing at this now point. So if there's the Old and the New Testament, then there's also the prior testament outside the book, and there's the forthcoming testament outside the book. Where life is. Yet also within the book. So I'm not poo-pooing on Islam or the Old Testament the way you think. Because it seems like I'm propping up like Jesus Jeebus at the moment, but I'm not. Because we all know them motherfuckers. That argument is old. Or at least the way most people think of old as being old. Several hundred years. But like, in this world that eats itself. And in this world where independent agents, aka every individual of every species, has a kind of free agency. What does the ultimate dominance look like? The ultimate dominance that allows free will. We're all believers and non-believers alike. And Thomas the Doubters. We're all familiar with the failure. We're all familiar with the butchery. But we're not all familiar with the simplest idea of butchery, that we don't butcher. We're not meant to butcher. If you're confused about, like, if you're not into the Bible, I don't blame you, man. Why? Because you heard all the same motherfuckers talk I heard talk. And what do they talk? Most of them talk shit. A couple of them talk fucking awesome. Just like the rest of us. Most of us talk shit. I'm talking shit right now. But somewhere within this shit, there's a fucking peanut. And if I'm starving, I'll eat it. So before you think I'm like shitting on like brown or black people, realizing that what I'm saying, because people, or what I've been talking about, people talk about, how like the Old Testament came from Egypt, and the New Testament came from the Old Testament. And then, I don't know a lot about Islam, but I know it sure as fuck all about the fucking Old Testament. And Muhammad's, interpretation of it, Gabriel, all that shit. Very, 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 very. Islam is almost more Old Testament than the Old Testament. It's like neo Old Testamentism. It is. I mean, it fucking is. Obviously, it fucking is. Right? Like, you don't got to be a genius. You barely got to be able to read to figure that out, or hear, for that matter. I'm pretty sure the guy on Johnny's Got His Gun would have figured that shit out. But I'm not saying it's not beautiful, and I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying it's yet to be messianic. Unless you're of the 12ers, then maybe, right? The Islamic 12ers. Then you might be on it. Because the progression of this simple little book, finally it comes down to one thing: anti-butchery. It's the progression of butchery to non-butchery. So, spoiler alert, what's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? What's the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? It's a heart. It's blood. A tree, especially if you're a ram, if you're a goat, if you're a lamb, and you got those hooves, and there's a reason why you eat the goat but not the camel. There's a lot of different reasons, but one of the reasons is because, like goats and lambs, they get them hoovy motherfucking things. And what do they look like? They look like tree. They look like trunks. They're shaped like this. They're hard, like a tree trunk. And if you're standing face on to a lamb or a deer, anything with horns, it's a tree. branches, hooves meeting the ground like a tree trunk. Heart. The serpent said, eat it. What do serpents eat? Serpents don't eat apples, and they don't eat figs. They don't eat no motherfucking fruits. We know. They eat of the blood. And what's the Old Testament say? Don't eat of the blood. One part of Exodus nobody ever brings up, and that's the shit. That's why you gotta read it from beginning to end. The commentary's good too. Listen to people talk about shit, look shit up. But you gotta listen to it beginning to end. Because you ain't gonna never hear the part. You ain't gonna never hear no preacher, no parson, no motherfucker. You ain't gonna ever hear no deacon, no bishop, no pope being like, God was given manna from heaven, grain. And then people were like, we want meat. We're sick of your manna from heaven. So people are always like, oh, manna from heaven, good God, all this shit, right? Yeah, in the book, it says, God's people didn't really appreciate it. You know, I know how it goes. So I'm acting like I'm preaching right now. I'm a drunk, I'm a smoker, I'm a fornicator, I'm a liar, I'm all that shit. I don't want people to be like me. I'm not preaching because I want people to be like me. I'm preaching because I want to kill the vision. I want to kill the bad dream that this fucking world is. And the bad dream that this world is the collective free will that manifests itself like a chimera. It manifests itself like a man of war. Is it a species? That thing that looks a bit like a sea urchin, the man of war, that chimera, that's the shape of the nightmare. That's the shape of the nightmare of this world that we either successfully or unsuccessfully flee from. If you're a success in this world and you're living your, you got all the shit and everything's fucking great, hunky-dory, the nightmare got you, man. Maybe. A little bit. Not really. It's like Oprah. A lot of people love Oprah. A lot of people hate Oprah, A lot of people hate Oprah because she's rich. A lot of people love her because she fucking went where other people didn't go. That's the Oprah I love. She said shit people didn't say. She went where others didn't go. Expanding the conversation. That's fucking awesome. It's not like, okay, if she was just living large, if she was just living large, that's one thing. But that's actually a small part of her life. That's a small, tiny, minuscule, just piece of her life. The rest of her is what matters. And that goes for a lot of people. A lot of celebrities that everybody hates on. Winona Ryder. Yeah, she's not Neil deGrasse Tyson. Yeah, she's not Mother Teresa. She's fucking awesome and has made the world a better place. So I ain't meaning to shit on anybody. But anyway, what I was gonna say, I'll just wipe all that shit aside I'm gonna cut off every trail. Just to get back to the idea, it could be because I feel like I'm shitting on brown and black people, but I feel like the prize, so far as the West is concerned, I have a lot to learn. But there's a lot in the West to learn from, too, that gets overlooked. And, the fact that, Josephus talks so much about the Essenes, and the Essenes keep coming up, and the Essene gospel of peace, whatever that is, and whether even if it's a forgery, if you're able to pull if you're a white dude able to pull off a forgery 100 years ago about in order to inject that Josephine Ethiopian blackness back into the conversation, that's a success. Some lives are more important than some documented histories. And people, and that's the problem with history too. And that's why, like, I say, I say George Washington didn't own slaves. I say he pretended to. And people be like, oh, but we got the documents. Somebody named George Washington, who was a British soldier, and lost to the French. He lost to the French as a British soldier, who later became the allies that helped him defeat the British. And overthrow monarchies on 2 continents. Could something have been going on beforehand? The Underground Railroad wasn't a 19th century phenomenon. It went back forever. Forever. It goes back to fucking Adam. And before. Anyway, all I guess I really wanted to say was that the 18th dynasty Akhenaten revolution was, we all know the Trojan horse, right? Whatever Josephus was talking about, whatever he was describing as Assyrian, and whatever the central idea, God, of that concept was the thing that infiltrated Egypt and became the Akhenaten heresy. There are 2 camps, those for and those against Akhenaten. I got one fucking thing for you to look at. It's the proof in the pudding, bitch. Mary Totten. The sculpture of Mary Totten, Akhenaten's daughter. Period. End of story. It's all over. Even Sister Wendy didn't talk about that shit. Sorry. But yeah, the sculpture of Mary Totten is probably the essentially, so far as artifacts go. I mean, I know it's already priceless. It's priceless square, man. It's... If I had to choose between the Mona Lisa and the sculpture of Mary Totten, it wouldn't even be a fucking... Wouldn't have to think about it twice. Now, 100 years ago, I'd say you better protect both them motherfuckers. Aesthetically, Mary Totten, M-E-R-I, Mary, M-A-R-Y, Mary, Mary. Oh yeah, but what I really wanted to get to today is the Marys, you know? And I confuse, like, text, like, canonical text, with apocrypha, with hearsay, and popular legend, you know. So I get a lot of shit wrong. But essentially, I consider, especially as the crucifixion goes, symbolically in my mind, I see Jesus with the three Marys, right? Everybody else has left, all the dudes have left, he's been denied, he's been betrayed, he's been hidden from. And the three Marys remain. Mary, Mom, Mary Magdalene, however you see her, and Mother Mary. And I might have this wrong, but in my mind, Mother Mary is Mary's mother. Anne. And this is... No one ever talks about Anne. So, like, only recently in the last 30 years, Mary Magdalene's really kind of come up into popular culture and more. I know she's always been, like, a big deal here or there, right? But, like, kind of everywhere. Everybody's heard of her now, right? Everybody kind of has a feel for that gig, you know? But ain't nobody talking about Anne. Mother Mary. So Jesus was a virgin birth, right? Believe it or not, but go with the story either way. I'm a doubting Thomas, man, so I gotta feel all this shit out. And doubting Thomas gets poo-pooed upon a lot. But I always say, good enough for Jesus, good enough for me. I'm gonna feel this shit out, man. Fucking ain't right, I'm gonna put my finger in that fucking... virgin birth. So Josephus is the great historian who talked about the Essenes. And what I'm saying is the Essenes informed the Egyptians. The Essenes informed the Old Testament. The Essenes informed the New Testament. The Essenes, the Josephine Essenes, informed the Moors and the Kabbalah, the most important part of Islam. The Essenes informed Joseph. The Essenes of the Old Testament, who was embalmed, by the way, and supposedly Moses or Aaron or whoever took out his bones, which was his mummy. So wherever they went, Joseph's mummy went. Joseph was mummified as an Egyptian. There's some fucking Egyptian tomb. There's some Egyptian mummy somewhere. That's fucking Joseph. Period. 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 No matter how you read it. Period. Informed by the Essenes. The Josephine of several thousand years later. And of the several hundred years before Joseph. Because in the Old Testament, I was shitting on Gideon, but like in the Old Testament, man, for me, like so far, it's like basically I came upon Joseph. Joseph is awesome. Everyone else kind of sucks, pretty much like me. And a lot, much more than me, which is hard to believe. But like Joseph is awesome for a dude, and Boaz is awesome for a dude. Not as awesome as Joseph, but pretty awesome. I like the story about David. I like that he was the weakest, right? But of course he, you know. But like so far as people who like my tenderness and my child and my compassion love, So far, up to 2 kings, so far. Really, what gives me the most rise is when I hear about fucking Joseph crying after being reunited with his brothers who tried to fucking kill him. And Boaz. Boaz, who was a gentleman to a needy woman, and fell in love. I understand that that's still like guy gets the girl shit. But in that context, I wouldn't say it's heroic, but like you have people who care coming together. And that's no matter the context. People who care coming together under awful circumstances is awesome. But yeah, the first Joseph, man. Brothers try to kill him, and what's he do? He saves their fucking ass and cries with them for it. Awesome. And then Joseph marries Joseph. He didn't do the humping, but he did the protecting. Father. But anyway, the whole deal with Mother Mary and Mary's mother is that if Jesus was born of a virgin womb, there was no sperm, but there was an egg. You can consider the dove of peace or whatever, the Holy Ghost visiting upon Mary as being the sperm, but whatever the case may be, there was definitely an egg. And that egg was formed inside of Mother Mary. Why? Because a woman is born with all of her eggs. And all of her eggs are formed in her while she is in her mother's womb. God was formed inside of God's own grandmother. Whether you're into the literalism of it, science, no matter how you slice it, like, it's a fact of the matter and it's a fact of the fiction. And fiction and fact both have the same root word. So that's something we got to deal with if we're philologists. Or if we're philosophers. The logos and the mythos, right? Divine reason. Reason with me. Walk with me for a while and reason. Reason with me for a while. Like, reason is the logos and the mythos. Reason is the pattern, and the pattern that we know and the intuition of the pattern we've yet to realize.